Hello, fight fans, and welcome to the Combat Challenge podcast. My guest today is a former lightweight athlete with over 44 professional fights to his name. He has competed on prestigious promotions all over the world, and within the UK, he's competed on Cage Warriors, Ultimate Combat, Cage Rage, and M1 Challenge. He's also represented Team England as a boxer and Team England for M1 Global in MMA. I ain't finished there. He's also a TV presenter and commentator on events around the globe. He's had a documentary done on him on Danny Dyer's Deadliest Men, which hopefully he'll talk about. He's also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt under Roberto Atala and the head coach of Team Quantum and also the head honcho of Rio Grappling England, Mr. Ian M16 Botlin. Nice to see you, my brother.
How you doing, Carney? All right.
All right. I hope you like that introduction, brother.
Yeah, it was a long one. It makes me sound really busy.
Brother, you are really busy, and I'm so pleased we were able to do this podcast. I really appreciate it, my friend. Ian, the first thing I want to ask you, my brother, the fight name M16, can you talk us through where that came from?
Yeah, I've got a twin brother that fights as well, and me and him used to, we trained together all the time, and we had the Northern Cartel fight team, which involved the guys at Filin Kazan, before it was called Filin Kazan, us guys at Quantum, the guys at the Coliseum, all training together, and Neil Hall and the guys at Fighting Chance. When we're all training together, it was Aaron Chatfield, who's one of the coaches, a Thai coach now, a very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player as well, good MMA. And he pointed out the difference between myself and Dave, who have got very different sort of striking styles. And I throw very fast, like sharp combinations, whereas David just bombs big shots. So he named us M16 me for the fast, like machine gun combinations, and Dave was B52 for his big bombs.
He is in it. And Aaron Chatfield, I remember him doing an interview. I remember seeing it a while ago, and him talking about that and how we came up with these names for yourselves.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, he used to be my MC on Combat Challenge before he put down the mic and moved on.
I think he's done just about every single job in MMA that you can do, over the years. Aaron's one of the first guys who really, well, because, I trained with you at Les Allen's gym back in the early 2000s. And then when we left Les was like, it was like a kind of like a very, it wasn't part of the, as what you'd call the UK MMA community. Les liked to do his own thing. And when I left Les's, I wanted to train some other places and stuff. And Aaron was one of the first people I got in touch with. So he was Aaron Mui back then on the SFUK forum. And I was boxing Brit, and I messaged him and whatever. And then that's how I ended up going up to train at Team Coliseum. And then again at Neil Hall's Fighting Chance and stuff like that. So Aaron was like one of the first people outside of Les Allen's Dragon's Gate that I got involved chatting to outside of in UK MMA.
Well, let's talk about your mixed martial arts journey, brother. So from a young age, if you can talk us through the timeline of what sort of sports you got involved in and how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, well, started fairly young. As most people my age, we watched Karate Kid and wanted to get in, and wanted to be the Karate Kid. And my mum and dad didn't want me and Dave hitting each other, which, I think we'd already started at that point. And in their kind of wisdom and hopefulness, they decided to send us to judo instead. Because they knew someone who was a judo instructor, and they thought it'd be better that we were throwing each other than punching each other. So we started off with judo. I still wanted to do striking and stuff. So I did a few years at judo, competed at Richard Dunn Sports Centre and stuff as a young kid, really enjoyed that. Both my brothers doing it with me. And then I started doing the Thai boxing with Steve Haitley, Rama Thai boxing camp. Trained there for a while, and then we moved from the Huddersfield Sports Centre up to the YMCA in Huddersfield Town Centre. So when we did that, there was a boxing gym upstairs. So I ended up started doing the Thai boxing, and then on a Sunday I'd go upstairs and box afterwards, and just wanting to learn as much as I could. And then my friend's uncle then opened Gym Tech 2000 in Springwood in Huddersfield, and I started training down there. We helped him like build and paint the gym and whatever. When they opened up, a friend of mine, Middy, was a professional boxer at the time. Keith Tate's foster son. So Keith Tate's a legend in boxing in Yorkshire, who had Cleckheaton Boxing Club and Dewsbury and Batley Boxing Club. It's his son and and a professional fighter under him. And so I met him, started doing boxing with him, and just fell in love with it. Started just skiving college and boxing and. I always loved the fighting. I loved the judo, the Thai boxing, and then around that sort of time in the HMV and stuff in town, you could buy UFC 1 and 2. We saw them, and having already done judo, boxing, Thai boxing, it was just something that just looked so natural. So you started Googling places where you could do something like this, and amazingly found Les Allen in Halifax. There's an interview with him on SFUK that Carl Fisher had done, talking about how he'd come back from Pancras in Japan. He'd trained with the Shamrocks in America and passed the Lions Den test, which was a big thing back then. Kind of famous. And that's where I met you, Carney, because I think you were the first person I ever grappled with.
That was a long time ago, brother. What was that? Maybe 20 odd years?
Must be 20 years ago now, yeah. Early 2000, something like that, 2000, 2001, something like that. A long time ago.
Yeah, so
neither of us had grey hair then, Carl.
You're right there, brother. So we'll stick with Les for a bit. Just tell me from your experience, what sort of stuff that you kind of picked up from Les during those early days.
Well, as you know, Les's training was levels above probably anyone else in the UK at the time. He'd been away to America, like I said, to the Shamrocks. Then he'd been to Japan, Pancras, fought in Pancras a few times in 1999, come back. And so there wasn't many people, there was probably a handful of people at that time that had the sort of skills that he did, especially if you look at like the leg locks and things like that. It's like it took years, it's only now that you see other gyms getting this sort of high level of leg locks that he got from the Japanese. So we were learning things back then that seem pretty new to people now. And I think the other thing that stands out for training with Les was the fact that you drill so much. I can teach a class now, and you turn around and people have drilled something 2 or 3 times, and then they decided they want to move on to the next thing. Whereas at Les's gym, it was kind of like sometimes drilling in silence. You might drill a move 100 times, and it was that old sort of Japanese, like military kind of style, like you do this is what you do. And I think some of the training was hard there, and I think it didn't suit a lot of people, and people came and went, and it was tough, if you decided we're doing Vale Tudo that day, you're sparring bare knuckle MMA. Do you know what I mean? You know what it was like. It was tough, but I think like maybe now you'd be questioning it a little bit, but back then it was like, wow, this is amazing. Like you can't learn this sort of stuff anymore. I mean, Les had me out in the woods up near his house, doing like balancing down the like the wooden railing, while he's hitting me with a broom handle, and all sort of like stuff you see in a martial arts movie. But he got the best out of the fighters. Like I know a lot of guys who, like yourself, who were Les Allen former students, and there's none of them that aren't good. Like the level that he got out of people, and I do believe a lot of it's down to the fact that he did this sort of military style drilling. You'd repeat a move over and over again until you had it perfect. And I say to my guys now, don't practice till you get it right. You practice till you can't get it wrong. And he had that definite sort of style.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, brother, because sometimes you'd be there and you'd be doing constant duck walks. And you'd be thinking, how many of these? Or you say, right, okay, you're doing 500.
You just got blisters everywhere.
Yeah, and it wasn't matted upstairs. It was horrible. Or then he'd say, you're doing 500 squats. But now you can see the thought process because you ended up just being on autopilot, right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I was only reading something the other day that obviously I did my degree in sports science, and I'm really interested in sports coaching and stuff like that. And it was saying that you have to repeat a movement 400 times before you develop the synapses and stuff in your body to remember that movement. But then it was talking about how if it's developed during play, then it only takes 20 times. So I do see the benefit of the the regimented, like doing it 400, 500 times. But I also think that there's ways, and I try to train a little bit different, where it's like a bit more playful, learning for yourself. I'll put you in a position, right, guys, see what you can do from here, and then I'll start giving them pointers, then work again from this position, see if that helps, and then work. And I think, there's definite benefits to the old regimented style, but I also think that there's better ways to train.
I think, and also in those days, Ian, there wasn't many gyms around, so it wasn't like you could compare Les to anyone. So you didn't know if Les was any better. I
still think now you can't compare Les to anyone. He's different.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, at that time, there wasn't any gyms there. You couldn't put a Google review or anything. So you thought, oh, this is the norm because this is, how great it's going to be. Only after time you realize how good he really was and how much ahead he really was, right?
Yeah, I mean, I went back. Me and Andy went back to have a chat with him. Now he's got Game Fight in Halifax, and just when I chat over the old times and all that sort of stuff. And I think he's it's definitely a hidden talent. I think back then Carl Fisher called him like the greatest hidden talent in the UK. And he carried on. He was never into this, like the fame or notoriety or anything like that. He just wanted to get on, have his little team of guys, and if that's what you love and that's what you want to do, he got what he wanted out of it, didn't he?
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, it wasn't a small period of time. That's just how he was, and that's how he's been, and he's been consistent all the way through, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, he was brilliant back then, and we are talking 20 years ago when we were there, and now still teaching, still got a team of guys, still working, at a decent level. So, yeah, very, very good, very skilled, and still. I've probably never seen anyone who can shoot as fast. He's like, 1 minute is in front of you, the next minute is around your legs. It's just absolutely just lightning. And so skillful, like I said, he's one of the best that I've ever rolled with, and I've rolled with some real good guys. To compare guys the same sort of size, you've got guys like Soccer, who was like ADCC bronze medalist for Brazil. He's a friend of Roberto's, my coach. He came over and stuff like, and like I really would put him up that sort of level. He's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel fortunate to have spent time with him and created the foundation with him. Regardless of what happens in the future, it was a good step for me, that. Brother, so we've talked about Les. Are there any other coaches, either in MMA or boxing or any other sports, that have played a significant role? And if so, if you can share that with us.
Yeah, so like I said, Midi was one of my friends who he became a close friend. I didn't really know him at the time. I started boxing with him. I'd done my boxing at the YMCA and the Thai boxing, but I really worked with him for a long time. And he's got a very different style of boxing and something that I've taken on myself, where, it's not a case of just doing a load of bag work, a load of pad work. I'll get people in the ring and we'll work on the skill, the art of boxing. So we'll work on, today we're working on the counters to the left hook. We might work through 3-4 counters to the left hook and then working it into drills and live stuff, or work off the different stuff we can do, slipping off a jab, and really like working on developing the skill, making sure you've got, every single attack and defense, you've got 3-4 different options from every position. So it's similar to how you sort of would in jiu-jitsu. You want to work on, right, here's my escapes from side control. I've got different, and I might have to combine those escapes to get out, not just working on one technique here, one technique there, and sort of build it up. So I do my boxing very much like that. I worked with him for a long time. Like I said, boxed, ended up boxing around the world, Cyprus and the Seychelles, and getting a really good experience from the boxing. And I still love boxing now. I boxed last in 2018 in the main event over at a show in Bowlers nightclub, just because I'd got myself out of shape, partying and stuff, and I just thought I need to set myself a date, get myself fit, and get back in. And so I did that. So yeah, Midi's a big influence in the coaching. And then when I left Les's, like I said, I was on SFUK. met Aaron Chatfield, started training over at the Coliseum, and trained with Neil Hall and Carl Fisher over at Fighting Chance. And then Roberto Talla had been on the SFUK forum asking for people in the UK because he wanted to come over and train and start doing the jiu-jitsu. He was a black belt under Brazilian top team, the guys from Carlson. It was Carlson Gracie, that's where I'm getting confused. It was Carlson Gracie, then they formed Brazilian top team. So you got Murilo Bustamante and Sergio Souza, who where he got his black belt from. So he'd got the black belt, and he'd won the world championships 3 times at the colored belts, and then he got a silver medal as a black belt. And he came over to the UK, and my brother Dave put him up, and he was with us at Quantum, and I learned so much, training with, at that point, 2003, there weren't many good black belts, especially not world champion black belts. And so we got the opportunity to train on a daily basis. We'd just got the Quantum gym at Diggle. We'd put the mats out, even though we were still developing and building the gym. And we got to roll, every day with a high level black belt. So we'd already got good training from Les. We come away with good stuff. And then, as you know, even if we wore the gi at Les's, there wasn't really much gi stuff. You weren't holding the gi, you just rolled, and as if it was no gi really with a gi on. Whereas when Roberto came over, we really started to work on the gi stuff. So that went on for the time when he was here, and then he moved away to Poland, set up and I took him up to Scotland, introduced him to Paul McVeigh, Gary and James Doolan, who are all up there. They're all now black belts under Roberto, and they run Rio Grappling Scotland, whereas I've got Rio Grappling England down here and 3 clubs. So you can see how it started to develop. And then Roberto went to Poland, Italy, all over. So we have the summer camp for Rio Grappling, and we all go to Italy, and there's teams from all over coming together. He's now got black belts all over the world. He's got, I think, about 5 teams in South Africa. He's got black belts in Russia. So Croatia, Serbia, it's the list endless. So so Roberto, another big influence.
Cool, man. Thank you for that, bro. Paul McVeigh, was he part of Dinky Ninjas, or am I thinking of someone else?
Yeah, that's right. So he was the Cage Warriors champion. He had him and James Doolan had the Dinky Ninjas. But I think Paul just focuses on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now. They've got the Grip House gym in Glasgow. I think he mainly does the jiu-jitsu there with him and Gary. And Gary's like amazing level jiu-jitsu, like a real good Brazilian jiu-jitsu brain. And then James Doolan's got higher level, which is still all linked together. And he's got guys like Stevie Ray, Dan Henry, and Jojo Calderwood all in the UFC. And even more good fighters, Luke Shanks and stuff that are on Cage Warriors. So it's a good network of guys, and I trained with James a few weeks ago. Absolutely brilliant skill, and so it's nice. The first time I trained with him was up at Glasgow University in a sports hall in 2003. So, 18 years later, it's nice to be in and training with him again.
For sure. And James has got his own podcast, which is actually called Higher Level Podcast, and I've listened to it, and it's really cool, and it's quite informative and educational when it comes to various sports, not just MMA itself.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to be on there soon, so we'll have a good chat on there as well. Cool, but you came first, Carney, obviously.
Well, brother, we got more history, man. You know what I mean?
It's a long history.
It is, brother. It is. We've got these testing times, brother. So, a lot of the gyms and everything's affected. How are you able to keep yourself busy and keep your mind busy? Because that's the main thing, with the current climate, and keep some sort of foot within the mixed martial arts world.
Well, to be honest, I have been very busy all the way through. So, my first event that got cancelled was the M1 in Korea, which was the 30th of January. So I actually stopped working before a lot of people because I was flying actually out to the Far East. So that event got cancelled. Doing another event in China at the end of February, again, that was cancelled. And at this point, I sort of realized that, there's not going to be that many live events or anything. So I was really sort of worrying. And then some good fortunes came about, and I've sort of set up a home studio now where I can do the commentary from home. And I've been working with the guys through the guys at M1. I got to work with MMA Series and Clash TV. So sort of three weekends of every month, I'm commentating live from home on live MMA events from Russia. I've done a few from China as well, but mainly from some Russian events. So to be honest, I've kept really busy on that side of things, and then I'm still coaching because we've got guys who qualify for the pro fighters who have got fights lined up, so I can do training with them, and I've got my brothers as well. So, you know, I'm in a lucky situation where I've got my son now who I've just been grappling with this. I did 5-minute rounds with him this morning. He's 14 years old and taller than me. So, and he's been working on jiu-jitsu and boxing stuff since being quite small. I've got my brothers, obviously, who are good level at jiu-jitsu and boxing. So I've got plenty of guys that I've been able to train with and work with, just even in just a small sort of family bubble you were allowed even before the pro fighter thing. So nothing much really has changed apart from I can't have the big classes on the mats that I'd like. And I don't have my classes that big anyway, you know, like 10, 12 people tends to be the most that I'd want on the mats, because I like to teach a technique and I'll go around and make sure that everyone's got it right before I move on to the next technique, which is hard to do when you've got a full big mat of people. I'd rather, it's the way that I teach, I'd rather have a smaller group anyway. But not as small as these COVID groups. So I will be happy when it's done. But like I say, I've not let it affect me too much.
Good on you, man. And how's your brothers Andy and Dave? Are they doing all right?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. Andy, like I said, I've trained with Andy Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, getting some grappling and stuff in. Dave has broken his leg, but he's on the mend. So it's just one of those things, you know, we're permanently got some sort of injury, all of us. But yeah, as it stands, both good, both healthy, just one with a broken leg.
That's good. Well, listen, Dave is good with even with one leg and one arm.
yeah, still a tough fight.
You know, when I used to bump into you guys, right? And when I used to see you, I'm like, hey, how you doing, Ian? You're like, yeah. And Andy was really, you know, chatty and stuff. And Dave was a man of few words, right? And he'd give me that look. And I was thinking, what have I
done? yeah, he definitely has got a not friendly look.
But once you get past that, he's just a nice guy.
Yeah,
he's a funny guy, man.
And it's funny because there's people that I meet, you know, once or twice, and then they'll see Dave out and think it's me, and just get a total blank look. And I see him and say, "What was wrong with you?" So that's my brother.
Brother Ian, you've had loads and loads of professional fights. Out of all those fights, is there one or two that you could share with us that would be most rewarding? It don't have to be a financial thing. It could be some adversity or something that you overcame that you can share with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned from every single one of my fights, you know, and I was always of the opinion that even when you win, you should look at things that have gone wrong and try to improve. You know, it's easy to get carried away. I had a good winning streak at the start. But I think, you know, ones that stand out for me, my first fight on Cage Warriors against Chris Freeborn, that was June or July 2003. And I just remember the cage door slamming shut, and I'm thinking, it's like I'm on the UFC, you know, like I was just excited for that one. It was different because obviously I'd boxed a lot of fights, so it wasn't like I had that nerves for the first time fight because I'd had quite a lot there. One of my last fights boxing was in the Seychelles. Boxed it was Team England versus the Seychelles. It was like a Tri-Nations of England, Nigeria, and the Seychelles, and in a big sort of TV show for there, you know, so the TV lights. So it was quite a kind of a big event. And that was, I think, my best boxing performance. You know, I went out there. It was under pressure. The heat was amazing on the Seychelles. Like, you know, we walked off the plane and it was like thick heat that hit you, and I was thinking, oh God, this is going to be bad. But I got in there, and I think I had the best performance that I've had. You know, I boxed out of my skin and got clearly, like in the last round, because it was an international, so it was 4-2s back then, and in the last round because I give him a count with a double left hook. And my coach is like, get on him, stop him. I'm thinking, nah, it's too hot. Do you know what I mean? I maybe could have topped it off with a stoppage, but it was so hot, you know, you've got to conserve that bit of energy. And even in the last round, it was like, do you know what? I'm not going to blow myself out. And because, you know, there's so many fights you see where there's a come from behind fighter where they'll win at the end. And that could have been me. So I just thought, do you know what? I've given him a count. I know I've got him beat. Just carry on the game plan that I was going for. And I think it was probably my most grown-up performance, you know, like I didn't let my my heart rule my head in that one. I just carried on. Whereas I think earlier on, before I was as experienced, I would have just tried to go out for a finish, and you know things can go wrong. So that was probably my best learning fight as a boxer, and then obviously, like I said, the first MMA fight was big. And there was other ones where I learned from, you know, I moved down to featherweight and worked like cutting the weight. Had a good first cut on the Pride and Glory in a semi-final, like an eliminator for the title. The title fight didn't come off because at the time I was one of the only people weight cutting a big amount of weight, and Andy Foreman had Phil Harris, who had won the other bracket, and he was like, I'm not going to let you fight him because the size difference is too much. And if you watch Phil Harris later on, he did actually move down when the bantamweight and stuff started. So I can understand there was quite a big difference in weight there. You know, by the time I walked in for featherweight fights, I was 74 kilos, something like that. So, you know, it's quite a big difference. But then I fought for the Cage Warriors and Cage Rage titles at the same weight, but I was growing anyway, you know, sort of early 20s, still growing in size, and the cut got harder and harder, and it got to the point, you know, like with the M1 and stuff, where the cut to 70 was really, really difficult. But, you know, you learn from all of them. If I went back now, would I do the cuts differently? Probably I would, but, you know, it's something that I've learned that I can pass on to my guys, and hopefully they learn from the mistakes I made with my face.
For sure, brother. Out of all those stories that you just told, there was Pride and Glory. That was Mick Noakes, wasn't it?
That's right. So originally the first shows, it was Ian Freeman did the first one in Wales. So apparently it was because I got a call off Ricky Wright, who's writing a book on the history of Welsh MMA. And apparently that first event that fought on was the first ever MMA event in Wales. So that was Ian Freeman with a guy called Andy Wheeler. And then there was an incident that went on where Andy Wheeler, I think there'd been some argument behind the scenes with him and Ian Freeman on the money. And then I did another show. I went to do another show in Wales. I was cornering Spenner against Paul Jenkins. And that was a show Andy Wheeler did without Ian Freeman. There must have been an argument. And let's just say that there was a team of guys turned up to have a chat with Andy Wheeler. And I think it all got sorted. You know, Ian Freeman's a good friend of mine, so I do know exactly what happened from both sides. But I think Andy Wheeler made a big mistake in crossing Ian Freeman, and for us, it made some good stories in the old UK MMA at the start. So yeah, so that was Ian Freeman, Andy Wheeler, and then what happened was that Ian Freeman then teamed up with Mick Noakes. He did the one where I was going to fight, where I should have fought Phil Harris. And that was Michael Bisping's debut up in Newcastle, a sports centre there. So you can imagine, like back then, it's like, and people were even talking about Michael Bisping before that one. He fought a guy called Cherry Viper, Steve Matthews, and people were talking about Michael Bisping, like, look, you need to watch out for this guy. He's going to be good. That was before anyone even knew it was his first ever sort of MMA fight. And I think he'd done like the old combat ones where it was on a mat, but this was like his first sort of MMA fight. So I was gutted that I didn't get to fight for the title on the same night as Michael Bisping made his debut, but it's just one of those things, isn't it?
Well, I remember Pride and Glory because I fought on it a couple of times. But do you know what used to make me laugh, brother? Mick Noakes, right? So he was the promoter, he was the matchmaker, then he'd have his own ring and he'd build the ring. Then he'd be the MC
and do his martial arts demos as well.
Well, he'd be the MC announcing the fights, and then in the interval, he'd put on his karate suit, starts walking on glass and stuff, clear out the ring and continue.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I remember one of the events where they'd done breaking bricks, and it must have took longer than the break to clear the broken brick out of the ring.
It used to remind me of, because I even said to him, I said, brother, you look like Wyatt Earp, you know, of Tombstone, because you had that
Yeah,
muchacho and the long coat.
yeah.
Since I've known you, you've been on quite a few documentaries, and one that sticks in my mind is Danny Dyer's Deadliest Men. Can you tell me how that came about and just talk about the experience of it?
Yeah, that was. So we were on the second series of Danny Dyer's Deadliest Men, which they called Living Dangerously. The first series, he'd done some work on some people. He'd interviewed some people that I knew. So when they were looking at people for the second one, that's how our name got thrown in. So he'd done Barrington Patterson, who was a great kickboxer and a friend of mine from down Birmingham. And then I got the call where the producers had been given our name. Are you interested in doing this? Asked me a few questions and stuff. And at the time, I'd just been picked to do the M1 Global in. So the first fight was going to be in Japan. So I was talking about that, and they were saying, "Look, could we? We think this would be brilliant to do the to do the show, looking at that." And obviously, because my brother was doing the coaching for the team, it made perfect sense for them to do a show on two twins from Huddersfield. There was other things that had gone on as well, like like with police interference at my apartments and stuff that they thought would make an interesting sort of storyline alongside the fighting. So yeah, that was it. We had a chat with producers, then they came to see us maybe a couple of weeks later, had a look at the locations and things that we'd discussed. And then they filmed. He came up to stay for a week, and then I think it was after the weekend he came up for another few days. And during that time, we maybe filmed 50 hours of footage and then so we, like, when it came to actually showing the show, we didn't know exactly what was going to get shown. You know, I was sat laughing myself watching it. It was good fun. I think they edited it really well and stuff. I thought it was good. It showed a good bit of the MMA stuff, a good bit of some other stuff, and it made it very entertaining.
And I think Danny Dyer is the right one for it, with his little Cockney, you know, accent and his whole bish bosh, and you know,
he's a quality guy. I got on really, really well with him when he was up here, and I've been out. He was up in Huddersfield doing some DJing. I went down and had drinks and stuff with him before I quit drinking.
You don't drink at all now?
Nah, not for nearly 3 years now.
Oh, no wonder you look so healthy, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I had a bad do with that, so I knocked it on the head. So, yeah, it was no good for me. So, I spent quite a lot of time. I was an enthusiastic drinker for a few years, so it was about time I stopped. So,
you've got loads of experience when it comes to competing at a professional high Premiership level and also coaching at a high level. What advice would you give to athletes who are thinking about turning professional, so that from your knowledge and experience, to compete? And then also, what advice would you give to those who are thinking of dipping their toes and going into the world of coaching?
Right. Well, firstly, I think the main thing now is, I mean, it's very different to, when we started out, where you were just looking for any show or anything where you could fight. I think now there's a good amateur route where you can get good experience as an amateur. You've got things like IMAF, where they're really pushing the amateur sport to another level, especially I think with the coaching qualifications and things as well for IMAF. I think all that is definitely progressing the sport in a very positive way. And I think for the thoughts on going professional, I think you need to have a good coach who's been there and done it, and has that sort of experience and knowledge to say, look, yeah, you're at the right level with your amateur career. We didn't have the chance for an amateur career, and that could have been some detriment, and sometimes it was. But at least everybody else was in the same boat. Most people that started out when we did have got 50-50 records because you were just fighting anyone you could. So now there's actually a very sort of organized progression where you can do your amateur career, maybe get 10 amateur fights under your belt, fight numerous different styles of fighters, get used to the night, get used to the cutting weight if you're going to cut weight, and all the preparation. And then you can get into the professionals, and you can start with, your journeyman kind of fighters, and progress your way through and start to build a record and work against those different sort of styles and things before you jump onto the bigger shows. I had my first professional fight on Cage Warriors against Chris Freeborn, who was a very experienced fighter. He's got a win against Brad Pickett, so he shows like he's a decent level. He was good sambo experience, but you couldn't get fighters. You're not going to find someone to have a warm-up fight for your first pro fight. Now you need to be sensible. Don't be jumping in, and take your time.
Sure. And that's for the athletes who are looking at competing. What about those people who are thinking of coaching? What sort of advice would you give them?
Well, again, for coaching, I'm a big believer that, it's good to get in, experience the sport. You don't have to be fighting as a professional. There's so many good examples of coaches who weren't good professionals or good at competing, who have gone on to be good coaches. But I do think that there needs to be some sort of experience, get in there and just to know what you're going through, even if it's just a few amateur fights. And then, like I say, things like IMAF, where you've got the qualifications and a bit more guidance and structure. I think there's so much more chance to do that now. That's not to say that there isn't good coaches out there, who've come with experience now. But I think if you're starting off and you're looking to be a coach, I think you need to be doing quite a bit of work to improve your knowledge all the way around, not just your knowledge of, say, stand up, striking clinch, grappling clinch, and ground, which is, your 4 ranges of MMA. But I think also the weight cut, getting ready for fights, and all sorts of preparation. There's so much. Mixed martial arts has got so much. I've always said that when you're training for a fight, it's like spinning plates. You'll start working on improving your grappling, and then the next thing your wrestling's falling down, so you need to work on that, and you're constantly doing it. And I think as a coach, even more so, I'm teaching striking, I'm teaching wrestling, I'm teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the gi and no gi, and then I'm also working cage work and stuff that's purely MMA. So there's so much stuff to do spinning plates as a coach. It's not something that you can just say, do you know what, I want to be a coach, and you've done a year of training. I don't believe that. Mixed martial arts is too in depth to be any sort of a coach just after doing a year in a gym and then some qualifications.
Ian, thank you so much, man. That's really cool advice. I appreciate that, brother. Brother, you're talking about spinning plates. That's something that you're doing yourself because you're commentating, and also you're dealing with the MMA side of stuff at Team Quantum, and also you're doing the grappling side at Rio Grappling. If you can share with myself and the viewers, if people were interested in engaging with you and learning a little bit more from the MMA side at Team Quantum and also the grappling side, how would they get in touch, and what sort of stuff would they expect from you? Okay,
well, I'm on social media, Instagram at ENM16 Butlin. I'm also on Facebook. I've got my ENM16 Butlin page on Facebook, and also Rio Grappling North of England pages on there. So people can get in touch with me through there. I don't have social media on my phones. I don't have WhatsApp or anything on my phones, just because I'm busy and it will distract me from things I do every day. But I check them every day, so I have them in my office when I get back. So I do check my messages and I reply to everybody. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me around training, or even for commentary for fighting events, if they think that me doing remote commentary from home would help them with their event, or even past events, I've had events sent to me and I can record the commentary over the events here. And provide that for people as well. So anything like that, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'm always open to chat.
And brother, when you get tired, you can just step back and lie down in that bed, right?
That's generally what I do, yeah. I've been having an afternoon nap since I was about 22, 23. I get an hour in the afternoon every day, and I think it just helps me, because I train in the morning, I train again at night, and it's hard to do that without an hour in the afternoon.
So, Brother Ian, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So we've talked about, your professional career and also the coaching side. What else are you doing to keep yourself active nowadays?
Well, currently I have a pretty good routine with training. I get up in the morning, I do yoga every morning because we're getting old, Carney, and you know, I have if I don't loosen up, I feel like I can't do anything. So I just spend like 15 minutes doing some yoga. Then I shadow box, sort of depending on the my recovery and how hard I've been working. I'll do it as a recovery shadow box or a high paced, and then I just get into my daily work. And the main projects I've got on at the moment, Rio Grappling Club, which I've been building Rio Grappling Club England with Jamie Hay. We had the idea a few years ago. We'd been training and working together on the commentary for a while. Roberto Otala, who is the head coach of Rio Grappling in the world, as I said earlier, was one of my main influences in training and jiu-jitsu. And he'd always wanted us to have sort of a Rio Grappling England. Because I spent a lot of time doing mixed martial arts and no gi, that meant that I didn't really focus on doing gradings and pure jiu-jitsu and learning the game. And maybe a little bit of arrogance, thinking that for mixed martial arts you only need the no gi, which you know I now totally disagree with. But yeah, so I've spent time building Rio Grappling England with Jamie Hay. So he's the full-time coach, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach over at Rio Grappling Manchester. Then I've got Rio Grappling Huddersfield as well under England. And then we have Calderdale as well. One of our good fighters and competitors, Lewis Ridley, who's a purple belt under Roberto Otala. He's there at Calderdale, and I help do the coaching over there. And he's like sort of got his own little team. So we've got like three decent teams already out of Rio Grappling England. Things are growing and improving all the time. And then throughout that team, we've got guys who are wanting to compete in mixed martial arts. You know, that's still a big part, and all of that comes under Team Quantum MMA. So once this nonsense is over and we can all train fully. At the moment, we've got guys training for fights. So we have the elite athlete rules where they can still do some training, but at the moment, there's nothing much like serious. So as soon as things sort of reopen, we'll be full time, 3 clubs: Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, submission wrestling, which is, again, I believe it's completely different to no-gi jiu-jitsu. We do submission wrestling as a different kind of sport in its own right. We've got the gi jiu-jitsu, and we're just trying to develop those. So that's kind of my evenings and daytime stuff took up with training. But I've also, like, the big projects working. I started working with Clash TV, as I said, doing the commentary. And Clash TV is like a totally different look at commentary for mixed martial arts events. We have the contracts who are out on Fubo Sports Network in America. We're on the Clash TV app, and there's a few different other places it gets shown. But what happens is you can download the app from the iTunes or the iStore. Look, and people can interact, ask me questions and things like that. So it's a very interactive sort of interface with the mixed martial arts as I do the commentary. And then from there, we're looking at doing a TV show, the MMA Uncaged TV, but again with an interactive element through the Clash TV app. So again, shown on Fubo Sports Network and other TV channels, but where people can ask questions, they can interview the guests as we're sat there, so it just makes everything a little bit more interactive, and I think adds a real element of viewer enjoyment.
Well, talking about interactive, brother, I could be wrong, but didn't Frank Mir comment something on your commentary?
Frank Shamrock, it was.
Frank Shamrock, yeah.
Yeah, Frank Shamrock. So that's, a real blast from the past name, and someone who's an absolute legend in the sport. And yeah, so he'd made a comment on there, which was amazing. And it just shows, the sort of level of guys who are watching on the Clash TV and who are watching these events, the MMA series, which is now Guerrilla MMA series, as they've sort of merged with the Guerrilla Energy Drink, who've had their own shows for a while over in Russia. So it's like, you can see that the event is growing. That Saturday was our first event with the Guerrilla MMA series as a brand. So it's been good fun, and you can see there's plenty more potential where it's going.
And you said people can download the app, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the Clash TV app is just available for free on iTunes. So if you've got an iPhone or iPad, you can just download it to your iPad, watch the events, and interact with myself and with the guys on the Clash TV app as you watch the events.
Ian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And I look forward to having you on the future podcast, maybe 3 months from now, if that's okay with you, my friend.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime.